Welcome to ACC play, a fresh start for the Miami Hurricanes, and maybe a last gasp final go at it for a division championship for the Virginia Cavaliers. They're on life support at 0-2 in the conference. Miami again with their ACC opener on a Thursday night. And let's talk about it here at the Voice of College Football. Welcome in, everyone, to our call-in show, pregame show, Miami and Virginia. We are live on the main channel and also on the Miami channel tonight. We will not limit the conversation to just Miami and Virginia. We are here to talk college football with you. So I'll be taking your calls, and we'll have the number posted here soon at 860-499-3332. I'd like to thank everyone that was watching our Iowa-Maryland preview with Steve Suter and Corey Bradda from the Iowa and Maryland standpoints. Steve joined us as a former Maryland All-American who is currently the Maryland radio color analyst on the Maryland Radio Network. And also, of course, Corey Bradda. You've probably seen him as the anchor and host of our Iowa coverage here at the Voice of College Football. So again, Maryland, Iowa, that's a huge game in the Big Ten. A couple of 4-0 teams going at it on Friday night on FS1, I believe, 8 o'clock Eastern time, Maryland and Iowa. And so we've got our preview set there for you. So if you missed the live stream, please check out our coverage of Iowa and Maryland. And if you love the Iowa Hawkeyes, you're interested in Big Ten football and Iowa in particular, we've got an Iowa channel available for you. And if you just want to flat out support the Voice of College Football, head on over there and please subscribe really to any of the channels that are especially below the 1,000 subscriber mark. Please subscribe there and help us get to that key level of subscribers on YouTube. Let's talk Miami and Virginia with you for the rest of the next hour and a half as we lead into kickoff from Miami with the Canes at 2-2 and the Virginia Cavaliers at 2-2. The big difference there is Miami's already completed its non-conference schedule at 2-2, and even though that's disappointing, all the ACC games and therefore the bid for a division championship and ultimately a conference championship right ahead of Miami. It's all right on the table for the Canes as opposed to Virginia. Again, they've got themselves off to an 0-2 start in the ACC, largely to a horrendous defensive showing, bottom 30 in the nation right now. And most notably the last two games against Wake Forest, giving up 37 points in 3 quarters as Wake Forest took their foot off the throttle the final quarter of that game as they were 3 scores ahead. And then prior to that, Sam Howell and company putting up 59 points on Virginia. All right. Let's see the call-in line. We will get it posted right here. Want to remind everyone that you get my predictions at Patreon, Voice of College Football on Patreon. Just go to Patreon, search MarkRogersTV, or you go to the description section of any of the videos. Just grab the link right there, and you get my predictions right there week to week. And, of course, we've got a 12-pack competition each and every week between 20 media members that are some of your favorites here at the Voice of College Football. And I think I'm in second place out of 20, I believe, that Steve Dace is separated himself from the pack, and that's not surprising based on his formula for selecting college football games. So if you want to get the edge there, check us out on Patreon. We've got my predictions as well as 20 media members that select the games each and every week. Steve Merrill joins us with his under-the-radar selection of the week. So it's well worth it, in addition to just the community that we've built there at the Voice of College Football on Patreon. All right, let me get the number posted. You can give me a call at 860-499-3332. This Miami-Virginia matchup, just the beginning of an enormous college football weekend. The matchups are insane this weekend. First look at the SEC and check out Alabama hosting Ole Miss. Arkansas the newcomer to the power structure in college football. Arkansas, undefeated, going to Athens to take on Georgia in a 4-0 versus 4-0 matchup. We also have LSU and Auburn going at it in the SEC this weekend. Big matchup in the Big 12 involves not Oklahoma, not Texas, but it's Oklahoma State taking on Baylor in the Big 12. Couple top 25 teams just newly entered into the top 25, Oklahoma State and Baylor. In the Big 10, of course, it's Michigan and Wisconsin as the Badgers hope not to drop to 1-3 and lose their second conference game. And Michigan, of course, at 4-0. And we highlight, of course, the game that we just delivered the live stream on, Iowa and Maryland, couple of 4-0 teams in the Big 10 on Friday. All right, those are the big games on tap, including Arizona State, UCLA comes to mind in the Pac-12. That's a pivotal game in the South Division. And let's see in the ACC, anything else besides Miami and Virginia off the top of my head? We've got Clemson and Boston College. Keep in mind, of course, Clemson has lost 2 games, but only 1 in the ACC. And aside from NC State, they control their own destiny. Now NC State controls the division in a sense. Boston College, though, at 4-0, along with Wake Forest, the only 2 undefeated teams in the ACC. It's Boston College taking on Clemson in South Carolina on Saturday. Let's get to your comments. And of course, let's get to the phone lines as well. I appreciate everybody being here. Let me catch up with the super chats first and foremost, because I hate when I miss these. Falcon or X, thank you so much for the super sticker to get us started on this Thursday night. And again, Falcon or X, thank you so much for the super sticker. Appreciate that so much. Let's hit the phone lines. We got a couple calls coming in. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. This is Kings fan 305. How are you doing tonight?
I am doing well. How's it going?
This game is about the person that a lot of Kings fans have been talking about lately, and that person is Mr. Diaz.
All right. Hang on just a second, because we're having an issue getting your call in through the call-in system for some reason. I don't know why that's the case. Yeah, so nobody's hearing you, unfortunately. I don't know why that is. I don't know what happened here, but I can't get you piped through the phone line. Yeah, I don't. I will check with the live chat, but nobody can hear the call, correct? Yeah, let me know on the call. The call's not going through the audio board for some reason. I have no idea why not. All right. Well, we'll keep going with the call, and I'll try to figure out what our issue is. Kane 305, you still there? Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. I don't know that it's going to be figured out. I may have to.
There's a little bit of time discrepancy there.
Yeah, I don't know what the audio issue is. Go ahead.
About Manny Diaz, and how I think that we need some more time with him. A lot of people on, especially Facebook and Twitter, is very kind of toxic, and you get that a lot with King's Twitter as it is. But people calling for Manny's head, I understand it. But, I like to listen to other people about this topic, and what I'm hearing is kind of what I'm agreeing with, and that is we actually need to give him more time. I think that that's kind of the truth, because we, as a program, have been going through coaches so consistently. We don't have a solid foundation, and I really think that Manny is the person to turn this around. People are calling for Mario Cristobal. I love Mario Cristobal. Do I think that he could have a great impact if he came here? Of course I do. The chances of that happening are quite slim right now with how he's doing at Oregon. And, I think that Manny had a point. You know, he's only been head coach for, this is his third year now, I believe, head coaching. He has brought in great recruiting classes. We saw last Saturday how those, especially on the offensive side, where we really needed those wide receivers. I mean, we're starting to get those kids on the field, and I think the kids really do trust Manny. You know, and the thing that kills me is that he changes up the staff. He knows when to make the changes in the off season. It's just like they're not sticking, and I don't understand why. And I don't know if that's completely on Manny because he's the one that's putting these people in the position to try to change things at the school, and they're just not working out. Like, what does Manny need to look for in a coach to really try to bring these kids and get them better developed? Because I think that's the main problem: player development.
Okay, so you think that Manny Diaz needs more time? I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I don't think that Miami or any school would want to get into a place where they're keeping a coach just because they think in the past there's been too much coaching turnover, that you're keeping a guy that you don't have faith in just because you're trying to create some kind of stability that doesn't exist. And so I don't think that he's done a horrendous job. I don't think that 2 seasons plus 4 games is typically enough to evaluate a coach. And that's all he's had, of course. And of course, his first season was pretty horrible. I don't want to use too strong of language to emphasize how bad the first season was. But then they turned it around to a certain extent last year. But of course, they continue to underachieve against anybody who's close to them in talent. And now we've got a third season in which they're dangerously close to being 1-3 right now with a win against Central Connecticut State, which you basically can't count. It of course counts in the win-loss record, but doesn't count in regards to any kind of meaningful competition. So the coaches that they've brought here, the recent hires, and I'm thinking of Travaris Robinson, I'm thinking of Rhett Lashley, have successful track records elsewhere.
No, I agree with you, Mark. And my biggest thing is like T-Rob. We heard about him all off season. That's kind of what, especially we're really hurting on defense. We're giving up big plays because our corners cannot keep up with the guys across from them. You know, I don't know if it's scheming or what, but when T-Rob was kind of the poster child for what Miami wanted to come and bring to the organization to try to help those players in that area get better player development. Like, why are we not seeing that? Like, why do you think we are not seeing that when we are getting kids from the area that we're supposed to close on in the state of Florida? I don't understand how we can have so much talent in a person that's shown, has a track record, like you said, to show that he can do a great job in player development with this kind of skill group. I don't understand why we're not seeing this here, Mark.
Okay, so what is your expectation? Let's start with this. What is your expectation of Miami football?
I expect us to at least get to the ACC championship with the amount of talent that we can recruit, and showed that we do recruit basically on an annual basis compared to all the other ACC schools, even just the coastal. I mean, it's really not even a comparison once you get past North Carolina talent that we bring in. You know, from a 4 or 5 star, that kind of rating basis, it's not even close. And we can't show up against those types of teams with the talent that we have, especially experience. Because isn't that the biggest problem that we're seeing this year? Is our veteran guys, the guys that we thought were going to come up and play to a specific level, a level of not dominance but winning. We're not seeing that. I don't understand why.
So I think what you've outlined is basically a correct observation by anybody who's paying any attention. Because if you do look at the recruiting rankings, which I will never state that the recruiting rankings are the end all be all, but they are the talent acquisition, and they have proven to be accurate in not every specific player, but in total, in mass, they're accurate. And therefore, Miami should have a top 15 to 20 team in the country. And then North Carolina would be in second place in that division, as you just pointed out, um, in the top 25 to 30 range. And then everybody else would be in the 40s and 50s in that division. So, based on talent, they should win the division most of the time. They should be competing for a division championship on a regular basis and winning most of those, and that's obviously not happening. So you go to two other points. One would be player development, so individual player development. Then it would also be the coordination of the offense and the defense and building a scheme that the players can understand and execute, a scheme that fits the personnel, a scheme that works, and then it if you extend to the next point, it's taking those three facets, the talent, the player development, and the scheme, taking that to the field on Saturdays, and then being able to have a good enough coaching staff that you can adjust to issues in game, adjust to the other team's preparation, make halftime adjustments and in-game adjustments. And I think they have largely failed at all of those aspects past the recruiting. In terms of what the answer is, uh, Manny Diaz, to no fault of his own, uh, would be a poor target. And I said this at the time, to be the guy to fix those issues and be leading a program based on his lack of experience going into it. He was being introduced as the Temple head coach and had taken the job when he was hired at Miami, and he was actually slotting into what was a reasonable career step at that point. And they plucked him away with no coaching search, similar to the previous transition where there was no coaching search, that they just went after Mark Richt, and they're paying for it now. So while from the standpoint of giving an individual a chance to succeed, and this only being the beginning of a third season for Manny Diaz, you would think that the way that they're playing right now, they're going to go 7-5. They're playing at a point, and what the other teams in the division are showing us, even though North Carolina is nowhere close to what we expected them to be, is everyone's shown the ability to beat everybody. So they may be in just kind of this free for all for the division championship, and that's not where they should be. So unless they turn it around decidedly, he's going to turn in another subpar season, and that's going to be, you could argue last season was maybe on point. I would argue that it was from a record standpoint, but not from a performance standpoint. So 3 seasons in, they've underachieved. I would think if I was running the show, that would be enough. He'd be gone. And that would be his third opportunity.
My fear, Mark, is recruiting. I mean, when we lose those types of games, the first thing that goes through my head is recruiting. Like, how are we going to convince these kids to come? Like, at FIU, I had no idea if kids were are their parents even going to let them come and play for our school, knowing how terrible we just did against FIU, the team that we should be absolutely destroying when we face them. And I have to give credit where credit's due, Mark. In the off season, man, he kills it every year. And we say he kills it because he, to our standards as a fan base and to those who are analyzing this as ESPN analysts and things like that, I mean, he's bringing in the people that people want him to bring in, like Rhett Lashley, and that helps with recruiting. And he has a point this weekend when he says that we need to recruit better. That's the truth. But my big fear, Mark, is, if we get rid of Manny, I mean, we have a solid class. I know we still got to work on it, but if we get rid of Manny, I don't know if Chikuri wants to play here. I don't know if some of those D-backs that we got, cornerbacks that are the highest rated, cumulative rated cornerbacks that we've gotten since like late 2000s, early 2010s. And those are the areas that we really, really need help. So I'm just going to end it with this, Mark. I want to give Manny at least 1 year. Let's see how there's still a lot of season to go. Let's see how they play against Virginia today. I think that they can turn it around with the talent that they have. And if they do, if we can reach an ACC championship against Clemson with the AC as wide open as it is, I think we should give Manny a couple more years to try to get this turned around, because as it is now, Mark, we have a losing mentality, it seems like to me, where we can't play up to teams that we should to.
Well, I appreciate the call. Thank you so much for the passion and the points on the Diaz situation. So you're calling for a third season, meaning this season, to let him play out for this year.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good one.
I am, I believe, going to reset this call up number again. For some reason, we're having issues. I don't know if it can be corrected. We will try. So I apologize to anybody who's on the line. I really can't take the call now. Don't believe I will be able to. Yeah, it's just not going to come through at this point. Hello, welcome to the Voice of College Football. Yeah, I'm going to have to restart the call-in system. It appears. All right. Let's see. I think we can keep these two calls on the line. We've got at least two here. And we'll give it another shot if I could find our call-in number. And why that's not going through the audio board, we'll have to figure that out at a later date.
Thank you for calling Call-In Studios host and call screener line. Enter your 6-digit PIN number. Welcome, host. You are now in the host room and can manage your callers from the Call-In Studio web interface.
Yeah, I don't know why that's not going through the board. Anyway, we'll take this next call, and hopefully this will go through, but it's not going through the audio board. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, this is Eli.
Eli, what's going on?
Not much. I want to talk more about like the Big Ten. Dude, that Big Ten race is looking so lit right now, especially in the East. I mean, that division is nuts.
Yeah, so obviously there have only been a couple games played in Big Ten play and only one game in the division, this Michigan Rutgers game. So, if Ohio State reverts back to form, maybe they take off with the Big Ten. But if that doesn't happen, the way the teams are playing right now, we just theoretically saw the worst team in the division, Rutgers, take on the second, third, fourth best team in the division and take it to a one-score game on the road. So really, if this continues, you're looking at, I don't know what the math is on 7 teams playing each other all once, whatever that is. It's about 35 or 40 games. They're all going to be a free-for-all, or most of them are going to be unpredictable.
Yeah. If Rutgers is even the worst team in the division, I'm not so sure they are.
Well, I'm not positive. I still think they are, but they played well last week. I don't know who would be if they aren't.
I mean, Indiana doesn't look anywhere near as good as they were last year. It could be Indiana, and I don't know. Maryland's actually looked pretty good, but they still have a lot to prove because they've done this before. They start out well, and then they flop once Big Ten play starts.
Yeah, the only thing I would say about those Maryland teams is that they had nothing close to the same quality at quarterback than they do now.
Yeah. Like, remember a couple of years ago when Maryland, like, killed Syracuse and, like, they looked, their first couple of games or so, they looked really good, and then they just flopped. I guess that's one reason why I would have a hard time completely buying in until I see how they do against the big boys in the Big Ten. I mean, they do look really talented this year. I mean, I like Tua's little brother a lot, but I don't know. They're like a very intriguing team. Like, could they be last year's Indiana? Who knows?
Yeah, I think this matchup tomorrow night is really intriguing because of the strengths and weaknesses of both teams. They're polar opposites of each other, Maryland and Iowa.
I mean, Iowa clearly looks like the best team in the West, but it is at home game on Friday night. Sometimes strange things can happen Friday night. So, I mean, I definitely don't see Maryland as good enough to win the Big Ten, but I think they should. I mean, I'm thinking there's a good chance they at least get to a bowl game, and maybe they pull off at least a really big up. Maybe they affect the race in terms of, like, pulling off some random upset somewhere that has a big impact. Maybe upset Penn State or Ohio State or someone like that. Who knows?
Yep, who knows? Again, the way Ohio State's playing, it's made it for an intriguing race. We think, we say all this having not seen Ohio State play a Big Ten conference game other than the Minnesota game, of course, but in division play. So if they get things figured out, they're by far the most talented team in the division, but they haven't played well. It's been 4 games. I don't know that a team like this is going to clean it up and become dominant to their level. And so it makes for the most interesting race we've seen in that division for quite some time, involving multiple teams, probably not just okay, Michigan's good and they're going to play Ohio State for the division championship, the last game of the season. No, where we've got week to week games where they're going to be factoring into the division race and going to be unpredictable.
Yeah. I mean, think about all the times Michigan, like, looks really good and they just are killing everyone, then they naturally just choke against Ohio State. Like, that's what I'm, like, Michigan's a team that's passing the eye test right now, but I have a hard time buying it because, like, if they beat Ohio State, then I fully believe in them, but I don't know, it just seems like no matter what, they just cannot beat the Buckeyes over the last 15, 20 years.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else?
Not at this time.
Well, I appreciate the call.
All right, thank you.
Have a good night. All right. I guess I got a project on my hands tomorrow. Try to figure out what's this happened the last time, I believe. We did the old call-in show, is it did not go through the board, and we've not changed anything. So I don't know why it's not giving me the option to connect through the board. All right. Let's go to your comments here. I'm excited because we've got a good Thursday night game. I believe Miami's about a 5-point favorite at home against Virginia. Miami's this close to being 1-3 right now, and that one win being pretty inconsequential. Central Connecticut State, that's basically a layup. It's a give-me win. They shouldn't even put the same two teams on that field to play the game. And then there are 3 FBS games being all losses. Appalachian State had 2 dropped passes. At least one for sure was dropped. The other one was more of a pass defended on the last drive of the game, in which Miami held up at midfield and forced a 4-and-out and ended the game. But Appalachian State was that one completion away from setting up for a game-winning field goal in a 2-point loss, and their field goal kicker had kicked 2 other successful attempts. So Miami's very close to being 0-3 against FBS competition. Virginia, please check out our video that we posted, Virginia, Miami, and from the Virginia side. They have basically made it this far on passing the football, period. Brennan Armstrong is second in the nation in passing yardage. He has 13 touchdowns and 3 picks, completing about 68% of his passes. He has been a one-man wrecking crew from the quarterback position because they're getting no running game from their running backs. Their top running back, Talapapa, has less than 100 yards rushing this season, and he's out. So the quarterback, Brendan Armstrong, does everything. They've got 3 really good receiver/tight ends, Dontavian Hicks, Jelani Woods, Billy Kemp, and that's it for Virginia. No running game. They pass it as well as just about anybody in the country. They can't defend. We ran through yesterday, Came Underwood and myself on the Miami Live show, where the last 18 meaningful Virginia defensive possessions, meaning the last 18 times in which the game was competitive. So Wake Forest let it go in the last 4 or 5 possessions. They had a 3-score lead, and they just took their foot off the gas and let it go. That the last 18% possessions of Virginia defensive football produced 12 touchdowns, 5 field goals, and 1 stop. 1 interception, 1 stop out of 18 possessions. If Miami can't get their offense on track tonight against this defense that is less than 100th in the nation in total defense, worse than 100th in the nation, and that's after playing William and Mary. William and Mary is representing 25%, 1 out of 4 games for Virginia defense, and they shut them out. And they're still that bad statistically. They got completely just torn to shreds by North Carolina and to a lesser degree, Wake Forest. That if Miami's offense can't get healthy against this unit, now we do understand that most likely Tyler Van Dyke is going to be the starting quarterback. I haven't heard anything more about De'Ara King and his availability. And so that has to be taken under consideration. Basically a first-time starting quarterback. All right, let's tee up the next call right here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, this is Reasonable Golf here, man. How are you doing?
I am doing just fine. What's going on?
Hey, man, I know this isn't really, my territory. This is Miami and Virginia here, but I was listening to you talk to about two callers ago. I got to say, I'm a little surprised that you, of all people, were sort of in favor, like if it was your decision that you would want to pull the plug on Manny Diaz this early. I mean, I know Miami's kind of, a joke right now, but it still hasn't even been, not only has it hasn't been 3 seasons, it really hasn't even been 2 full seasons if you count how weird last year was. I just think we are just dangerously in an age where no one is just given any time to do anything, to learn how to do the job.
Well, okay, I just want to clarify myself. Maybe I wasn't too clear. I said if this season is unsuccessful, and I gave an example of a 7-5 record, that I would let Manny Diaz go at the conclusion of this season. This being his 3rd season. And he probably shouldn't be in a position to be learning on the job. But that's not his fault. He took the job.
It was my understanding that he's a very young, very new head coach.
Yeah, by all indications, he shouldn't have a job at the University of Miami as a head coach. He had been introduced as the head coach at Temple when Miami plucked him away, and that's probably the level of competition and expectation that he should be learning how to run a program.
Mm-hmm. So I guess the question is how prestigious of a job do we really seriously think Miami is? Are they at such a prestigious level that they are above letting a guy that they didn't have any search for at all, they handpicked him out, but they're above letting him learn how to do the job?
because again, this is not, Miami's not USC or Alabama or Ohio State. Miami's a program that its administration doesn't care. I mean, I hate to say it, but for the most part, its fans don't seem to care. I watched that home game against Michigan State. They didn't even fill up the stadium. It's surrounded by Miami football is about the, I don't know what, 10th, 15th most important thing in the city of Miami. Is this a program that, do you think this program is at such a level that it is above letting the guy they handpicked learn how to do the job?
Well, I'll say this. It is a more difficult job and program to rate than most, if not all, because they do have the 5 national championships. They have the just ridiculous run of success in basically 2 spurts. And that's been a long, long time ago. So over the last 15, 16, 17 years, they've been a middling program. And when I say middling, they've been a mid-tier ACC and before that Big East program. They've been in the middle of the pack, slightly above average. If you could dwindle down Miami's performance over the last 16 or 17 years, they're 7-5. They're basically going 7-5 repeatedly. They're Kansas State, they're Purdue, they're Missouri, maybe not even Missouri. Missouri's accomplished more. So they have. So the thing is where I wrestle with this is that the Miami fan base see them as being much more. Seeing themselves and seeing their football program because they know what's happened. They either lived through it or they have seen all the documentaries and look at the record books and say, we have as many, if not more, national champions. My goodness, Miami, if you just want to go off national championships, which I think is foolish, but most people do, then Miami's, a top 5 program in the last 40 years. I agree with everything you just stated about the lack of commitment, apparently, or obviously from the administration, and the lack of resources compared to, they still have a lot of resources, but compared to the type of programs you're talking about. But where they have a huge advantage and where they are not failing is in the recruitment of talent. They're not recruiting at the level that they should be competing with the elite teams in the country, but they're recruiting and acquiring talent and have been for years at a level that should say 9-3 should pretty much be a standard, especially in this awful conference they play in. That they're acquiring top 15 talent in the country. So there is a coaching development, player development, a game planning for games issue that just is consistent. And the one last point I'll make, as I make this point from time to time, other than Mark Richt, and maybe put him in a different category because he was at the end of his rope, at the end of the line, and now we've seen some things, unfortunately, play out in his life that maybe have been a cause of that he wasn't of the mindset approach stage in life where he could give it a full go. So he's the one guy that they've hired in the last 20 plus years who has shown himself capable of successfully running a big time college football program. Take him out of the equation. Every other coach that's been the Miami coach has not proven there or anywhere else, none of them, since Butch Davis, that they can win and run a big-time football program because they've all failed before Miami and after Miami, wherever they've been.
So when you start, a couple things. First of all, when you were talking about programs that Miami could be comparatively spoken about or compared to, my first thought, and I said this in the comments earlier before I called, Miami's a lot like early Clemson or early Dabo at Clemson. I mean, Clemson was at one point where their ceiling was going to a bowl game against Kentucky. Early Dabo. And then another thing I might point out is when you're rattling off all these coaches that went there, were fired because it failed. Basically, it was like a musical chairs of head coaches. It seems to me that when programs get in a cycle like that, I'm comparing Miami right now to Tennessee. It doesn't seem to end. It's not like they're just randomly they're just magically going to pick up a great coach. I mean, I guess it's possible they might, but it doesn't seem like that approach seems to work. Clemson gave Dabo a long time, and I would say that worked out pretty well for him. He was basically exactly where Manny Diaz is now when he got hired there, and it worked out. I don't think Miami is a big enough program now, or I think they're so far removed from what you were talking about with the 5 national championships. Because let's also remember, before that, they were nothing. They were LSU before Nick Saban for pretty much most of the 20th century, up until the late 80s.
They were
So
a lot
I'm not convinced
worse
that
than
Miami
that.
is a big enough program that they can say you get 3 strikes and you're out. 3 years here. Particularly when they go out and hire a young, green, unproven, unexperienced head coach. They should know what they're getting into with that. So I think they should do the smart thing and let's see what this guy can turn into. They're saying that Miami needed to be at least competitive with Alabama. While that sounded nice and it sounded plausible with their recruiting rankings and stuff, it really was, just kind of a ridiculous idea if you really think about it. And Nick Saban has over 3 decades of experience, and he's the greatest coach in college football history. Manny Diaz is a 3rd-year head coach, and the only thing he's got to his name is a top 15 recruiting class. That was moronic to think that was going to happen. And I was guilty of it too, but hindsight, looking back at it, I think the expectations of everyone about Miami need to be toned down, and as well as that of Manny Diaz. A 3rd-year head coach, I don't think is going to be winning the ACC on a consistent basis. I'm sorry, not winning the ACC, winning the division on a consistent basis. Usually that doesn't happen. Obviously, exceptions like Ryan Day and Lincoln Riley, but usually that's not the case. And I'd also point out, I know I'm throwing a lot at you here, but those guys also were under the best training you could imagine before they got those positions. Ryan Day worked right under Urban Meyer. Lincoln Riley worked right under Bob Stoops. And Kirby Smart, who I'm also going to throw in there, worked right under Nick Saban. I think those are aberration cases. Manny Diaz is.
Yeah, I do too.
I think the expectations are just way overblown.
Yeah. Those 3 places are football factories. And again, the tutelage that they received leading into their jobs, they were transitioning into something different than most coaches. When most coaches are hired, they're hired for the number one reason is the coach before them failed to meet expectations, and they're usually walking into a bad situation, or at least a challenge of a situation, as opposed to Oklahoma, Ohio State, and Georgia. Especially Oklahoma and Ohio State, but all 3 of them, yes, they're football factories. They were running efficiently and effectively as playoff teams prior to those coaches taking over. Yeah, they're the aberration. Yes, they're the outliers.
Yeah, if it were up to me, I think 5 or 6 years should be enough growing pains. I mean, but I know last year was weird and all, but it did count, and I think they did win 10 games.
The question I have for you, though, Reasonable Gump, in evaluating Manny Diaz, do you take that stance? So I think that's a principled stance. I don't mean like morally, but in terms of a business sense, a principled stance, because stability, there is a connection between stability and success. Whether the success breeds the stability or the other way around, it's a complex relationship. So do you take that stance basically because regardless of who this person is, we've hired him, he's in the process of trying to build something, and we need to just leave him alone and let him learn, let him work through it, let him see what he's going to show us? Do we do that regardless of who we just hired, or do we do that because we see something in Manny Diaz that gives us indication that he can do that? Or are we just blindly throwing our faith at Manny Diaz because we want to see if he can pull this off?
No, there does have to be something there. And right now, I think you could point at the recruiting. I know Miami's in the hot. Basically, you should be able to just put up a sign saying "Help Wanted" in the football program, and you should get a top 15 recruiting class. But not all those coaches you were rattling off. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they were recruiting at that level. But if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. But again, I'm not there. I don't follow Miami football, so maybe there is nothing there. Maybe all the people who want Manny Diaz gone are right, and that he isn't showing any sort of potential as a great head coach. But I guess I'm just saying that if he is, if he's doing some things right, and it looks like this could end up being pretty good down the line, then yes, I think my viewpoint would apply. Where I thought you were going with that question is, does it apply to like everyone in every situation? And my answer to that would be no. Like a coach who is experienced, who is seasoned, like if they fired Manny Diaz after they lose to Virginia, and they go out and manage to get Mario Cristobal gets 3 years. He's experienced, and he does a good job already at Oregon. The expectations would be fair that he would come in and start competing at a high level at Miami. But I don't think those expectations were right to have on Manny Diaz right off the bat.
I just don't understand the approach, first and foremost, that Mark Richt, there's an impasse where he wants to go a certain direction. You basically say, no, you need to make changes. So he could have kept his job anyway. It implodes. He leaves, and you go running after this defensive coordinator that you had, who's being announced as the Temple head coach, and you just don't necessarily think that you can do a national search and get a coach in there that you feel completely confident in running the show. They can get Manny Diaz. He could have shown himself to be capable after 3 seasons at Temple. And if he, has such strong ties to the program, and it's such a step up from Temple, that they could have had the next coach after Mark Richt not succeeded, run after Manny Diaz 2 or 3 years later.
Right. I think someone once put it that I heard somewhere when they were discussing the Willie Taggart situation at Florida State, they referred to it, does Florida State want to be a training wheels program? Do they want to be a program where a young coach gets to basically use them to learn how to do the job? And it's only each administration and pseudo kind of fan base can decide that. Pretty much every fan base is going to say no. But the thing is, Miami did put, as you just explained, Miami put themselves in this position. They got a guy, they had no idea how good he was or what he could do. They went out and got him because he is Mr. Miami.
got to be that's like the only reason they could have went out and got if stolen from Temple. So they put themselves in this situation. So it would be my advice to okay, this is what you wanted. Now the only thing you got going for you, or you can have going for you right now, is stability. So I would roll with that for a while, and this is the guy you wanted. You knew that he, not to sound rude or anything, that you knew he didn't know what he was doing, but you still got him. So let him figure out what to do, and then hopefully it'll work out for you.
Unless at the conclusion of this season, let's say he underachieves, but it's not horrendous. He goes 7-5. And because of other coaching vacancies and other moves made around the nation, they believe that they have a good shot to upgrade the position with a proven individual. You know, the day after the season ends, there's going to be like 8 coaches get fired. That Sunday, like 8 coaches across the nation are going to get fired. And then there's all the domino effects from that. Like if you foresee that and say, you know what, Manny Diaz, if we got to keep him for another year, it's not the end of the world. He's working through some things. He's shown us good and bad, but boom, we can now get him possibly. Let's go for it.
Similar to what Alabama did when they had Mike Shula, almost exactly what Alabama did when they had Mike Shula and went out and got Nick Saban. Extremely similar circumstances.
That's what I would do. I would roll the dice and say, I think we have a reasonable chance to get one of these out of the 9 coaches that just got fired. We would take 3 for sure over Manny Diaz. We can get one of those 3.
But I'm guessing you would make sure you have a yes from one of those 3 before you pull the trigger.
Yeah, I don't know how probable that is, but yeah.
All right. Well, that's all I got on Miami. Just one quick thing here before I let someone else get on. So do you remember back in the summer where I got on and I chastised you for saying that you just kind of hand waved away the Ole Miss Alabama game, saying, yeah, Ole Miss might have a 10% chance of winning that. And I got on here and said that was ridiculous. That Ole Miss had the best chance of beating Alabama out of anyone on our schedule.
I don't remember it, but I'm not saying it did not happen.
All right. Well, do you think Ole Miss has a better than 10% chance of pulling this upset this Saturday?
I'll stretch it up to 20 or 22%.
You are really not buying this Alabama's vulnerable thing, are you? Particularly this year, Mark. Anyone can beat anyone, right? You don't think Ole Miss has a
no, I'm not one of those people that says, "Oh, this is kind of going on in college football everywhere, so we can apply it to every situation and every team." No.
I kind of thought that's what you said when you got on your 40-minute live video last Saturday, right as NC State was beating Clemson. You were like, we have entered an age where the elites or something are not just head and shoulders above everyone, and that they can be beaten by a lot of other teams. I'm not exactly sure what you said. But.
Well, I'm basically making the point. I'm not saying entering an age. I'm not making a forecast for the next 10 years of college football. I'm basically saying in this particular season, based on what we've seen, we see that everybody's beatable, everybody's vulnerable. I'm going to remove Alabama from that statement and say, that's got to be proven to me. And I know they went to Florida, and I know that Florida challenged them, and it was a good game, and I watched the second half, and I understand all that. That's also a road game. It's also a game in which they never trailed. And I'm not saying Alabama's not capable of losing a game. I just think that they and Georgia are playing the best football in the country. And between how well they're playing and how much talent they have, I think those are the 2 dominant teams in the country right now. And I'm giving Ole Miss a 22% chance of winning. I think that's pretty high for anybody that goes to Tuscaloosa.
Judging by what we saw happen last year and what we've been seeing from Ole Miss this year, I think they're deserving more of a 40% or so.
40% on the road. You're basically.
I think I was probably exaggerating when I said 50-50, but yeah.
If you're giving Ole Miss a 40%.
It was the hardest game we played last season.
I understand that. I've said that many times, even though most people go to the Florida game because of the score. I've said the same thing. I watched both the games, and if you go through the process of the way the games went, yeah, Ole Miss gave Alabama a bigger challenge than Florida did.
Absolutely.
And I think you can go to the previous season and gain something from that. I think that maybe we do that too much in looking at, okay, what happened last season? And you giving Ole Miss a 40% chance on the road of beating Alabama is almost like it's a coin flip game. Like if they were playing a neutral site game.
In that Ole Miss has played three teams without a pulse, and they've had a bye week. I mean, that's almost an entire month that Lane Kiffin could have been devoting at least partial time at every practice to looking at Alabama. I know at least he's had 2 weeks where we had the Southern Miss game, and then now we have Ole Miss and then Texas A&M. I think a lot of the scheduling and a lot of where this falls heavily favors Ole Miss. Like you pointed out, the only exception of that is that it is in Alabama. But I might also point out that Alabama fans, Bryant-Denny Stadium is not known for being one of the most difficult places to play in the SEC. It's one of the most beautiful places, but it's not. Our fans are not raucous, extremely loud and obnoxious, and make it really like a bad environment for the other team. That's more your South Carolina, Florida, and LSU stadiums that do that. So I don't think the home field. I think the only advantage the home field has is the fact that it's not in Ole Miss. That's the only good thing about that.
I am a person who never goes to the Football Power Index because I don't believe in it, and it's never proven to justify its predictions. But it's giving Ole Miss a 19% chance of winning.
Yeah, I think that's insane. I thought the line that Vegas gave was ridiculous. Of course, then again, I thought the line Vegas gave in Florida was ridiculous too. So,
okay, we shall see.
I mean, I think this can be a game where it's back and forth, and it's probably going to take a couple interceptions or fumbles to make the difference.
I hope it is, and I will go on record as saying that even though I'm a neutral bystander in this matchup, that I'm rooting for Ole Miss to win. Why am I rooting for them to win? Because I want different teams to win.
Mm-hmm. I get it.
So,
there's no offense at all. I was rooting for Oregon to win. So,
all right, man.
For NC State.
Well, thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good talking to you. See ya.
Absolutely. We'll see you. All right. Next up here at the Voice of College Football, we'll keep our eye on this Miami-Virginia game, which I believe is kicking off maybe about 7:35, something in that range. So we'll go for another half hour. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's George.
George. How are you?
Yes. I don't want you to call the authorities, but if Notre Dame beats Cincinnati, I'm going to kill myself, okay? But don't call the cops. I mean, I'm not really going to, but that's how much hatred I have for Notre Dame. I think they should lose forever to everybody. And Penn State.
So you feel this way about Notre Dame, but you just picked this particular game to call in and make that comment.
I'm so upset. They keep putting Brian Kelly on the screen, and I'm like, my nose looks just like his nose. I'm like, how is this drunk bastard coaching a football team? I don't get it. I'm like, how's the guy with a purple nose in charge?
I didn't know that was a qualification.
All right. I predict Florida is going to beat everybody. That's what I'm really here for, to boost the Gators. All right, Mark. I know we got some dead air time here, so I'm going to tell you a story.
Yes. Oh,
Three
tell me a story.
times- Three,
If it's not
three
related, if
times.
it's not related to college football, you're going to hear a dial
This
tone.
is not perverted or weird. Nothing
If
bad
it's not
about the story.
related
It's
to
a good
college
story.
football, you're going to hear a dial tone.
This guy, this Michigan fan I know,
Okay.
he lives by me. He moved like 50 miles away from where I live. He paid me 3 times this week to give him a ride to his house. He gave me $40 each time. And that's about what it cost in gas. But I just love the guy, and I was so happy to help him. He thinks I'm Jason Stratham, the driver. You know, like, I'll get you there. It's like, bam, bam, bam. And I needed the money.
All right. Well, if you needed the money, then he was a godsend for you. Glad that worked out for you.
I know I just ruined your show, but it was all in accordance. It was all working together perfectly. It's all college football. Mark, I'm not lying. I came out of Safeway today, and I walked by the place where the people turn the bottles in. There was $16 worth of bottles there, Mark. $16. And I looked around, and nobody was there, and I put them in the door, and I returned them. And they gave me $16. I'm like, is this really true? Could this be happening? And then I went in and got a couple more 6-packs, you know?
Anything else from the day's events that you can share with us, George?
Yeah, I just want to tell everybody when I talk about 6-packs and drinking, I'm just joking. It's all about reading books and being serious. Once you read books for 20 or 30 years and be serious, you can have a beer now. You've earned the right to have a beer, you know? Do not drink before you're 50 years old.
Get all that drinking out of the way before you're 50?
Mark, I never smoked pot until I got out of school, and I never drank until I grew up. I mean, it's literally a plan for life, right? You don't smoke pot until you're at least 20 years old, and you don't drink till you're 50. And you'll do fine. I promise you. Just those rules. Don't smoke pot before you're 18, and don't drink beer before you're 50. You'll be fine.
Words of wisdom from George.
Words of wisdom from George.
And with that,
and I'm picking the Gators over Kentucky. Although I know that could be tight. I don't know about the point spread.
All right, George, we're going to keep it going. Thanks for sharing story time with us.
Person that ever lived, and I'm afraid of Kentucky. So I love you, Kentucky.
All right, George. George loves Kentucky.
It's a good game.
We shall see.
Later.
George, we'll see you. Have a good night.
Can't stay up all night talking to each other. All right.
Okay. I think that did it. Unfortunately, yeah, our call-in system, my goodness, I don't know what we need to do there. We do have one other caller on the line, and I'm going to have to get them back on. We'll see here.
Thank you for calling.
This is
enter your 6-digit PIN number.
Virginia and Miami. Does anyone know when kickoff is? I'm guessing it's about 7:37, something like that. All right, let's take this call. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, this is Joe.
Hey, Joe, what's going on?
Hey, Matt, how you doing?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
So what are your thoughts on the Miami-Virginia spread? What do you think Miami covers? And do you like Van Dyke or Garcia better?
Well, I can't comment to that because I've never seen either one of them play. So I'm being told that Van Dyke's a better quarter. Well, I'm being told that Van Dyke understands the playbook, the system, all of that right now better than Garcia, but Garcia's got the higher ceiling and he's more mobile. In terms of the point spread, I've not made a pick on this game. It's not part of my prediction list for Patreon this weekend. So I didn't make a prediction on this game, and I would just be shooting at the dark. Usually I would take Virginia with close to a touchdown against Miami, but one of their best players isn't playing. They've had a ton of injuries on defense. They haven't been able to stop anybody. And they pretty much are a one-handed team, playing like a team with one hand tied behind its back with basically a great passer and some receivers, and that's it. That's all they got. No running game, no defense.
Yeah, their defense, I don't know how much they give up per play, but it's not pretty. If Van Dyke or Garcia looks pretty good, do you think King should still be the starter when he comes back? Because I haven't been impressed with him, but then there's also times where the receivers just drop horrible passes or drop good passes. But what are your thoughts on that? If Van Dyke looks good and blows Virginia out or something, and do you start him next week or do you put King back in?
Well, that's a great question because you can look at it two ways. If you're looking at it in terms of, okay, let's say Miami loses this game 50-45, and Tyler Van Dyke lights up the Virginia defense. He looks great, but they lose the game. So we're getting more into the territory of this season being lost, although that's only one loss in the ACC, and the ACC so bad and that division so bad, you're going to have to lose 3 games before you're out of it. So you're not going to be out of, your season's not going to be lost regardless of what happens tonight. So, you're making a thought as to, De'Aaron King left Houston, came here, and in a sense, you're showcasing him for a job in the NFL. Not a starting job in the NFL, but a roster spot in the NFL versus, trying to build your program for the future. And that's where I think your loyalty should lie, is doing what's best for the program long term. But as long as they can win the division, they got to play the best player. And that's not coming for weeks and weeks and weeks to where they would get to the point where they can't win the division.
Yeah, I remember seeing Garcia in not preseason, but the scrimmages, and I thought he looked better than King. So I see what people are saying about his ceiling. That's all I was trying to get on with that one. But what do you think about Bama and Ole Miss too with the spread? I don't know. I mean, I'm on your Patreon as well. I don't know if you don't want to release it over the phone or something, but what are your thoughts there? Can they cover that 14.5 spread, Bama?
Well, I appreciate you being on Patreon. Can they cover it? Well, of course they can. We cut a video today with Steve Merrill, who says that his analytics say that Alabama should be more like a 20-point favorite. So, of course, they can cover it. It could be a really good game, and they could still win by 17 points. It could be a 3-point game with 10 minutes left, and Alabama could score twice. So, in terms of who could cover or not cover, that's always wide open. Of course, they could. What I don't like is once these point spreads get past 2 touchdowns, then most likely it becomes less about really projecting a game and what's going to happen in the game, and it projects to, what's going to be going on in the fourth quarter. And if the game's out of hand, then it becomes there's an element of randomness and luck involved. So I'm going to have a pick on the game because I got to pick the game and I got to determine 14.5. It's a lot of points, obviously. And Alabama went to Florida 2 weeks ago and they didn't come anywhere close to covering that point spread. And a lot of people think Ole Miss is better than Florida.
Right. It seems like there's pretty good value on Bama's first half. I mean, they've covered all of it. If you think the better play would take the first half, seem unstoppable in the first half, and then usually the team comes back.
Yeah, but you're going on one game. I know that you're also looking at the Miami game when you say that they came out and just blew their doors off. I don't even know what the number is in the first half.
Too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You're going on the one game, the Florida game, but also Miami that they jumped out in the first half as well. So what's the number in the first half?
7.5.
Oh,
7.5.
yeah.
First half.
Yeah. That's something I've never looked at. I've never looked at what the numbers are, for a half.
Yeah.
Something I've never played. All right. What are you thinking? How do you think this is going to play out?
Yeah, no, I was just curious and all that, and I think I don't know. I think that's all I got. I was just seeing what your thoughts were there. I think there's value on Bama first half just because it seems like they always cover the first half. Miami, Florida, even the weaker teams, Mercer, Southern Miss, all four of them. So we'll see what happens.
Oh, so you're saying Alabama covered all four in the first half?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And going back to last year as well.
Okay. Well, if you see a trend.
All right, man.
All right. Well, I appreciate the call.
I'll let you go. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Have a good one. All right. So I'm seeing about 7:37 for the kickoff tonight. Miami and Virginia. We're about 15 minutes away from that. Phone lines are open here at 860-499-3332. The typical lively debate here in the live chat. Jay Bird says Rattler believes his press clippings. That was a great discussion we had the other day on the Oklahoma live stream. Not just about Spencer Rattler and whether he's the guy to blame. Because anytime the offense isn't working, everybody blames the quarterback. But what else is not working there for Oklahoma? There's a lot of issues along the offensive line. There's wide receivers not fighting for the football, not catching the football, but mostly offensive line seems to be Spencer Rattler's undoing. Not that he's playing well. But beyond that, interesting conversation we had about booing college athletes. Because somebody commented here the other night that called in that said they did not believe in booing college athletes until NIL kicked in. And now that NIL is a revenue source for these athletes, that they have no issue and consider them professionals. Okay. But we had a pretty good conversation about that, about booing college athletes. Mo Dean is obviously a Notre Dame fan. Mo Dean has been leaving comments in here all night, even our previous show, about Notre Dame just basically rolling everybody in sight. So they will beat Cincinnati 30-10. So if anybody wants any betting advice, there you got it directly from Mo Dean, who says Notre Dame's going to roll Cincinnati, and Notre Dame's like a 2-point underdog in that game. Of course, Cincinnati's got the bye week. And Notre Dame's they've got obvious issues. They're 4-0. They beat some good teams, but they can't block anyone. They ran for 3 yards last week. 3 yards. And Jack Cohn is hobbling around. We don't know if he's going to play. He's playing on a bum leg, and I think it's an ankle. And even if he's in the game, is Jack Cohn the guy that you want throwing the ball 45 times? No. So that will be a game I've got to see. There's 3 games that I think have separated themselves in regards to just ridiculously huge matchups this weekend. And I don't know how long Arkansas is going to be able to hang with Georgia. They've got their own injury issues with possibly KJ Jefferson and Treylon Burks taking on a Georgia team that's just throttling everyone in sight. Although, hey, if Clemson could hang within a touchdown of Georgia, then Arkansas should be able to, right? But Arkansas playing its first true road game of the season, a 18.5-point underdog against Georgia. And then, of course, Ole Miss, Alabama, and then the Cincinnati Notre Dame game as well. All right, let's get to the phone line. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
This is David Knight.
David.
How's it going?
It is going pretty well, if I can figure out what's wrong with our little phone system here, but that's okay. We'll go old school and just hold the phone up to the mic. We'll do that tonight. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, wanted to ask you, okay, like I want to create a scenario and then let you elaborate on it. You know, when the NFL does their mock drafts, right? They're projecting how good a player is, how well he fits on a team. So then when you look at college football and the drafts, or not the drafts, the recruiting that they do you ever, and this is like for everybody across the board, it's not just the top usual 3 of Ohio State, Clemson, and Alabama. I mean this for everybody. When they have these high recruiting rankings, do you think it's because they stockpiled like a lot of good players, like they just took them wherever they could versus that they need actually for their team? Because like for me to see those top 3 teams fail, especially Clemson, then like, and you could even say Georgia and LSU because they're perennially up there as well. Actually, Georgia is supposed to have the highest composite ranking, but is it a matter of them not recruiting the positions as well as they should versus just saying, hey, you know, this guy is a great player, let's just take him? What do you think?
So it's a great point that you make that. So when we look at the recruiting rankings, the only thing that we're seeing is a sheer talent evaluation. That's all it is. It's just sheer talent. And so we are not taking, you know, the recruiting rankings are not taking into consideration that the quarterback position's worth more than the other positions. Number one, it's not taking into consideration the needs of that particular team and whether that recruiting class met the needs of that team. It is simply saying that this is the aggregate talent evaluation of these 20 players that were signed by Wisconsin, and these 20 players are rated at these different levels, and it adds up to this total number, and we place it 20th, just one spot behind South Carolina and one spot ahead of Michigan State, and that's where it is. Whereas, obviously, every team's needs are similar across the board in regards to there's a certain number of offensive linemen that you need and quarterbacks and running backs and wide receivers, and every position has a set number of that is slightly different on each team depending on your style of offense or defense. So, for example, if you run a 4-2-5 defense, you only have 2 linebackers on the field, then you need less linebackers on your roster than you would if you were running a 3-4. So you probably have almost half the number of linebackers running a 4-2-5 than you would if you were recruiting for a 3-4 defense. But besides that, those nuances, you generally need, there's a position there's a position, forget what word I'm looking for here. Yeah, there's a number of players that would fit the roster for each position that you want to maintain, and you got to keep those numbers in mind when you're recruiting and signing players. So I'm kind of losing track of your question. What did you need past that?
Okay, like let's look at Clemson.
Yep.
Clemson has, perennially had awesome defensive linemen, correct?
Yes.
And they keep getting them hurt. And I don't know if it's just bad luck or if it's, I don't know anything about Clemson's training facility and their training program. And I'm not really picking on them. I mean, because injuries can happen to anyone, right?
Yes.
But it just seems like in the last few years, like Clemson so far has taken a nosedive, but that doesn't mean they'll end up that way. The season's still young, right?
Yes and no.
I guess what I'm saying is, go ahead.
Well, the only thing I'll say there is we can run down a litany of examples of teams that we thought were going to be really good, and they lost a couple games early, and everybody wrote them off. Turned out to have a tremendous season. Now, Clemson's put itself in the position, unfortunately for them, that they've lost the second game. So most likely, unless we have an unprecedented season, which we may have, they have played themselves out of the playoffs. And that seems to be the standard at which everyone judges teams now, especially at Clemson, that if they make the playoffs, then they met their goal. If they didn't make the playoffs, then they're, to use a term that everybody seems to use, garbage. I don't look at it that way. So if Clemson would right the ship and play similar to the way they've played for the last 6 or 7 seasons, miraculously out of nowhere for the rest of the season, and finish 10-2, 11-2, I would consider that a successful season, and that they brought themselves back up to their standard. But they, in a sense, have little opportunity to meet their expectations, or the expectations that everybody has placed on them.
I agree. Like, I believe that Clemson could still end up having a good season. You know, that's the ability for your coaching staff to right the ship. The other thing that I would ask you, and I've seen in a lot of your shows and other shows that I watch, is how the fan bases start scrambling and become very downtrodden and annoyed when they have these certain expectations for their teams. And if they're not meeting them, then they're like, everybody all of a sudden becomes an instant 100% coach of their team. Like, I know what's best for your team. And you're like, man, are you kidding me? You're not at practices. You don't know how to evaluate the talent on the team. And I just think it's madness. And it's not just been one or two teams. It's been a lot of teams where you see the fan bases, even like when Oklahoma was chanting for the backup. I think his name is Caleb Williams. Am I wrong?
That's correct.
I was like, man, like, how can you do that? It's like people have so little patience. Like, and like, you know, you don't contribute to the program. Who are you? Because you bought a ticket? I don't know. What do you think about all that?
Well, that's a great conversation, I think. And we had this one yesterday on our Oklahoma show because, of course, Spencer Rattler plays for Oklahoma. And if anyone watched the game the other night or saw the post-game interview, they know that the fans were chanting for the backup quarterback, Caleb Williams. Spencer Rattler was not, based on some criteria, not playing well. He didn't play a horrible game. They won the game. He led a game-winning drive. They didn't put up many points, though. They only put up 16 points. He had a 26 for 36 day. He threw an interception. He threw a touchdown. So anyway, his fan base is not happy with him. Generally speaking, of course, there were, I'm sure, thousands and thousands of people in that stadium cheering for him. So the issue I have with all of that is, number one, if he is not the player that should be on the field, if he is not the best choice to play quarterback for Oklahoma, then that's the coach's decision. That's not his decision. The only, and this is me personally, that I don't think that this is a rule and everybody should adhere to this, but this is my own personal moral compass of sorts, is that I don't criticize a player. Now, of course, I'm in the position of evaluating players and we talk about players. So, of course, I've got to be critical to a certain extent. But in terms of just bashing a player, I don't do that unless I feel as though they're not giving effort. As long as those players are out there doing their very best, they're trying 100%, they're giving it their all, then I don't think that they should be booed at the college level in particular. And if they are, or fans feel that they want to boo players, then why would they not be booing the head coach? Why would they not be venting their frustration and criticism at the head coach? Because the head coach is the one that's responsible for everything, first and foremost. And secondly, he's the one making the decision on what players are playing. So he's the one putting that player on the field. I also find it kind of petty and childish in the sense that as soon as a player has a poor performance, we've seen it on different levels in different sports. A player could have 10 great games in a row, and if they have one bad game, then they're going to get booed and criticized. And then the next game, if they turn it back around and have another good game, then those same people that booed them the week before cheer them. We sometimes knock athletes for the attitude that they have, but I can understand it. Do they really feel that they're being supported? Do they really feel like they're being trusted when the loyalty of some of the fans is only as far as their last pass completion? And as soon as their performance takes a turn, even if they're doing their very best, they're going to be turned on. It seems kind of ridiculous for fans to support, quote unquote, support. And that's really not the right word, because they're not supporting anyone. They're only cheering because they're winning or that player's playing great. That's not supporting. So true support is encouraging and uplifting and cheering when the player's not doing well. That's support. That's true support. That's when you need support. We don't give to millionaires. They don't need our support. We support charitable institutions where the people need the money. So you don't need support when you're on top of the world. And I'm just rambling about this, but I just find the whole psychology of it and the sociology of it somewhat fascinating and interesting. Just, it's the day and age in which we live with social media, and everybody's got an opinion, and many people like to be critical, and sometimes it's a bit petty and ridiculous.
Hey, Mark.
Yep.
I know the game's getting ready to start. Last question. Do you think the Ohio State fans have become spoiled from all the success that they've displayed on the field, and when things don't perk out right a little bit in the beginning, then they lost their minds? I never felt that way about Ohio State, that give them a moment to iron out some difficulties. Like, why are you losing your minds and being judgmental for no reason?
Well, again, I think a lot of what I just stated applies to that situation too. On the other hand, I understand all the money and resources that are put into that Ohio State football effort, for example, and that the expectations are that you win every game and go to the playoff and compete for a national championship. And it looks like that's slipping away. And therefore, it's going to be a quote unquote wasted or lost season. And the expectations that the Ohio State quarterback's going to be one of the best in the country.
Playoff conversation.
Well, they're
straight in there right now.
They're not, but if they continue to play at the pace that they're playing right now, they're going to lose more games. So I think the concerns are valid, and the criticism is valid, to a certain extent.
Okay, well, the game is, I think, is probably getting ready to start, and you and I need to talk here in the next few days, if that's cool.
Oh, that would be awesome. Thanks, David. I appreciate it. You have a good night.
I'll check you out, my man.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Last call of the night. We appreciate David being here and everybody else who called the show. I apologize for the phone situation. Hopefully everybody could hear the calls out there as I held the phone up to the microphone. All right. We're going to have Miami postgame here after the game, so be here for that. Miami, Virginia postgame with our guys Ross, Jordan, and Derek that provide Miami postgame each and every week. And because of the game being played on Thursday and not Saturday, we will have the postgame right here at the Voice of College Football on the main channel as well as the Miami channel as well. We'll be back here tomorrow night before the Iowa-Maryland game and also after the Iowa-Maryland game right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate everybody being here, and we will see you on the Miami postgame show after the game and then also tomorrow night.